A psychic FBI agent with all the warmth and social grace of an ice pick tracks a bizarre serial killer who may well indeed be the love child of Tiny Tim and Dee Snider in Oswald Perkins' brutally subversive descent into hell, Longlegs. Look, the film's been out for a few weeks, and before I get started, I realize there's lots of online chatter and frankly some dumbass reviews about this film being too slow or a bore. And I'll be happy to address these folks and give a little good old-fashioned homespun advice on how to deal with their ADHD closer to the end of the review, so you're gonna want to hang around for that. Now on with the show. So, Neon's creepy, enigmatic promo campaign for Longlegs is, in a very short time, already legendary in the film world. It's a real outside-the-box clinic in how to create buzz for a film without actually giving away any plot details along the way. Imagine that! Bravo, Neon! I mean, if these ads didn't send a chill through you, well, then congrats, you may well be a bona fide psychopath and not even know it. Hell, they had me with this image. So of course, I was not just a little wary of having the actual experience of Longlegs fall well short of expectations. And truthfully, it kinda does fall a little short. I'm not sure it really had a chance to live up to the hype, but it's pretty fucking close. And that's still enough to make this one of the year's very best films. Maika Monroe plays FBI agent Lee Harker, who, as a result of displaying some psychic ability in the field, is assigned the unsolved, decades-old case of a serial killer who appears to be remotely, magically inducing fathers into brutally killing their families before then offing themselves. And Monroe's performance here is a revelation. As a woman with obvious emotional scars and a possible childhood connection to the killer, she's completely inhabiting the kind of character we've really never seen from her before. The performance is truly compelling and great. However, I do take some exception with Oz Perkins' choice to write this protagonist as someone who is clearly on the spectrum. I mean, hasn't this kind of been done to death at this point? Now, I'm happy to see characters from all walks of life, able-bodied or not, sound of mind or not. But from a strictly creative standpoint, this character just feels like a cliche at this point. I mean, you know, amazing at the one thing they do, but otherwise, just a total social fuck-up. Note to screenwriters, this has been mined to death. Pull your heads out of your asses and come up with something new, please. Anyway, Agent Harker is tasked with solving murders and crime scenes where there's no sign of forced entry or DNA evidence of an intruder, just cryptic notes left behind, all of them signed Longlegs. Now, Blair Underwood is very, very good as her boss, Agent Carter, who brings a level of normalcy to a film otherwise completely populated by total oddballs. Gotta shout out Alicia Witt as Harker's eccentric, creepy mother. I'm not real familiar with Witt's other work, but man, what a standout performance here as a total recluse living her best hoarder life amongst mountains of discarded shitty knickknacks, and chiding her grown daughter to always say her prayers. Boy, oh boy, with moms like this, who needs anal warts? And then, of course, we come to the titular character itself. Now, I say it because I'm not sure there is any particular pronoun that would properly encapsulate this entity known as Longlegs. Nick Cage, buried behind mounds of facial prosthetics that would make even Mickey Rourke envious, and a stringy mop of bleached out hair is virtually unrecognizable here. And he delivers what will most certainly go down as one of his most iconic performances to date. This is Nick Cage fully broken free of his cage as he embodies not so much a character from planet Earth, but a malevolent agent of chaos and pure untethered evil that'll leave you shitting your pants for days after leaving the theater.
Ja? Oh, jongens. Ik heb een ongelukje. Ik ben...
And so Perkins spools out his story in a manner that honestly feels more like a fever dream. At times devoid of rationality, with gaps in logic, odd misplaced dialogue, and a sense that this isn't really happening so much in our world, but an almost identical, danker version of Earth where dread just lingers in the air like your Uncle Jimmy's ancient beer farts in the Ford Fiesta he just unloaded on you. Now, not only does the world feel both different and familiar, so too do many of the components of this story. Now, there's an all-too obvious connection to Silence of the Lambs here, what with a young female FBI agent with past childhood scars trying to maneuver in a predominantly male environment. The almost paternal relationship between Harker and her boss, it feels like Starling's connection to Jack Crawford in Silence of the Lambs. Longlegs, the character, feels a bit like the androgynous Buffalo Bill, only about 1,000 times more fucked up. And then there's some of Fincher's Seven mixed up in the DNA of this as well, what with references to Revelation. And hell, the one scene even felt like Perkins was channeling Blade Runner 2049.
So, when you're not performing your duties, do they keep you on a...
And yet, despite all of this, the film is nonetheless a unique little trip into the very mouth of hell. It's very much a case of lifting yourself above the familiar trees to experience a completely unique and terrifying section of an unexplored forest. There's a very methodical and serpentine approach going on here. Perkins elects to use various aspect ratios and framing for once, not as a cheap signal to the audience of the film's art house bona fides, but to effectively heighten an atmosphere of absolute dread. The film starts with a limited 4:3 aspect ratio, replete with the rounded corners, just like the grandpa's old home movies of Wasaga Beach back in the good old days when people weren't shitting on it, to not just give a heightened sense of nostalgia, but to ratchet up a fear of what might just be lurking outside the frame. The age-old truth, that which we cannot fully see, will most certainly always be more terrifying to us, is put to great effect here. Perkins early on takes a cue from Jaws. Now, in the '75 Spielberg classic, it's enough for the audience to just see a massive dorsal fin, and we can only imagine the size of the beast swimming beneath us. Here, we get a child's view of Longlegs, but Perkins only shows the monster from the nose down to its waist. So we focus on this hideous mouth with its falsetto voice, while never seeing the eyes and its thought process, and it's pretty fucking terrifying. The rest of the time, we have prolonged glimpses of dark spaces where characters are positioned in such a way that we can't help but search the frame for any hint of the monster. Now, as you may already know, the film does indeed morph from an FBI procedural serial killer film into areas of the occult and Satan worship. Now, some folks may be put off by that. Not me. This is simply a part of the dreamlike universe in which the story exists. Now, I'm no more likely to scoff at this than going to a Superman film and rolling my eyes because I'm watching a guy in tights fly around. Now, fact is, if I have any lingering criticism of Longlegs, it may well be in its awkward attempt to give a rational, summed-up explanation of its mysteries. I think I would have preferred a little more ambiguity in the end. So without giving much away, I do think the film missed an opportunity to give us an interesting hypothetical. Like, if we absolutely knew someone was responsible for committing murders, but doing so by supernatural means, well, in a legal system that is tightly constrained by what we accept as science and fact and legit evidence, well, hell, they simply just couldn't be touched. You know, it's an interesting idea that would have made for an appropriately grim ending. But hey, what do I know? So, look, like I said at the start, there's something else I wanted to discuss here about fan reaction to the film. bitching about the pacing or being bored by Longlegs. I've seen one pseudo-YouTube film reviewer bemoan the time of establishing shots, like he had his stopwatch out and the film, in his estimation, has committed the cardinal sin of passing a 3-second barrier that, well, he himself is mandated for establishing shots. One look on Rotten Tomatoes, as of this taping, will illustrate what I'm talking about. And frankly, whenever I see a split like this between audience and legit critics, I'm almost always guaranteed to love the film. Why, you may ask? Well, because for much of the mainstream audience, they quite sadly like their films, well, just the way they like their Big Mac and fries. Served up quick, super familiar, and with no surprises. By my lights, the very best film of this young century to date is Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin. And just look at its divide between critics and audience. Now, on my way out of the theater, having just watched Longlegs, I heard some teenager whine to his friends about what a complete bore that was. I can't tell you how much I wanted to grab him by his SpongeBob shirt and beg him to throw his phone away. These are the same young people who find Alien boring because there's not enough action in the first 40 minutes, or find The Exorcist unscary, or can't sit through 2001: A Space Odyssey without nodding off. Hell, I even read some reviewer give a retrospective review of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Apparently, the action scenes are still good, but there's still a lot of scenes that lag. Raiders of the fucking Lost Ark. Arguably the greatest action film ever made. I mean, I challenge anyone in the comments to name a greater action film, and for this dolt, it had scenes that lagged. I mean, we have an entire generation of filmgoers who, honestly, through no fault of their own, want only sky-high peaks with no valleys in their films. I've got news for those people. That's called a fucking plateau, and it's not terribly interesting. We have a generation of filmgoers that have been so overstimulated by TikTok shorts and video games that they want their movie experience to be the equivalent in terms of editing of a Coors Light commercial. A younger coworker of mine asked me once, were people in the 70s just slower back then? And that's how they appreciate those films? No, it's not actually a case of them being slow. The simple truth is, well, you're just so extremely sped up that you have the attention span of a fruit fly. And let's be fully honest here, it's not really their fault. Hell, this is the world you're born into. And to some degree, it's even affected an old bald geezer like me. Now, everything now is immediately downloadable, streamed at your convenience, and served up in bite-sized proportions to feed your chronic dopamine addiction, and then on to the next, and the next, and the next. Of course you're sped up. It's like someone laced the bird feeder with speed, and here comes the chipmunk raiding party. Believe me, no one in 1979 came out of seeing Alien and ever used the word boring to describe it. Same with The Exorcist. People were fucking terrified. And had Longlegs been released in such an era, people would have been shitting themselves in the theater. And for those of you who might mistakenly think it's a good thing to be fast and so sped up, let me leave you with this famous quote from Mystic Mayor Baba. A mind that is fast is sick. A mind that is slow is sound. A mind that is still divine. Burn your fucking phones, people, and slow down. Longlegs can currently be seen in a theater near you and gets an acid test rating of seriously scary shit. That is all.